For 15 years, Hassan had kept his past buried deeper than the roses he planted. But when he spotted the suspicious package near the playground, muscle memory from his intelligence days kicked in, and the quiet groundskeeper vanished, replaced by someone much more lethal. I wonder where you're watching this story unfold from today. Whether you're in a bustling city or a quiet suburban neighborhood, you've probably seen them, the unassuming people who tend our parks, clean our streets, or work quietly in the background. But rarely do we consider what stories these invisible workers might be carrying. Today's story will change how you see the people around you forever. Hassan Demir was 74 years old and had been tending Riverside Park for 15 years. Every morning at 5 a.m., he arrived with his worn tool bag and thermos of strong Turkish tea. The residents of the surrounding neighborhood knew him as the gentle old man who could make anything grow, who always had a kind word for joggers, and who kept the memorial garden in perfect condition. He lived alone in a small apartment 3 blocks from the park, furnished with simple furniture and walls decorated only with photographs of flowers and landscapes. No family photos, no personal mementos, nothing that revealed his past. When neighbors asked about his family, Hassan would smile sadly and say they were far away. When they asked about his accent, he'd mention coming from the old country, and change the subject to soil conditions or seasonal planting. His daily routine was as predictable as sunrise. Check the sprinkler systems, tend the rose garden, sweep the pathways, and maintain the playground equipment. Children loved him because he always carried candy in his pockets and knew the names of every bird that visited the park. Parents trusted him because he was always watchful, always protective, ensuring their children played safely. But Hassan carried secrets that weighed heavier than his gardening tools. Before Hassan Demir became a groundskeeper, he had been Colonel Hassan Demir of Turkish military intelligence. For 25 years, he had operated in the shadows, infiltrating terrorist cells, preventing attacks, and gathering intelligence that saved countless lives. He spoke 7 languages, could assemble explosives blindfolded, and had eliminated threats across 3 continents. The scars on his hands, which neighbors assumed came from gardening accidents, were actually from knife fights in Damascus safe houses. The slight limp he developed on cold mornings came from shrapnel in Belgrade, not arthritis. The way he always positioned himself with his back to walls wasn't caution, it was survival instinct. Hassan had retired after a mission went tragically wrong. His team had been ambushed, and 3 young agents under his command were killed. The guilt drove him to request immediate retirement and relocation. Turkish intelligence arranged his new identity and placement in this quiet American suburb, where he could disappear completely. For 15 years, it worked perfectly. Hassan genuinely found peace in growing things instead of destroying them. The park became his sanctuary, and the community became his family. He had almost convinced himself that Colonel Hassan Demir was just a memory. Almost. Riverside Park's annual Spring Festival drew hundreds of families every year. Children played on decorated carnival rides, while parents browsed craft booths and food trucks. Hassan had spent weeks preparing the grounds, ensuring every flower bed was perfect and every pathway was clean. He moved through the crowd with his usual quiet efficiency, emptying trash cans and picking up litter. To everyone else, he was invisible, just the old groundskeeper doing his job. But Hassan's trained eyes were constantly scanning, automatically cataloging exits, crowd density, and potential security concerns. That's when he noticed them. 3 men in their 30s, moving through the festival with purpose but not enjoyment. They carried backpacks and kept checking their watches. Their clothing was loose-fitting, designed to conceal weapons. Most telling of all, they avoided eye contact with security cameras and positioned themselves near the playground where the largest concentration of children gathered. Hassan felt his pulse quicken as decades of training kicked in. He recognized the signs because he had once been taught to exhibit them. Hassan continued his maintenance routine, but now every movement was calculated. He positioned himself where he could observe all 3 men while maintaining the appearance of casual work. His weathered hands, steady despite his age, reached into his tool bag where he kept items that weren't quite standard gardening equipment. The first man checked his phone and nodded to his companions. Hassan caught a glimpse of the screen, a countdown timer. The second man moved closer to the playground equipment, his backpack now clearly heavy with something that wasn't personal belongings. The third man positioned himself near the main exit, blocking the primary escape route. Hassan's mind shifted into operational mode, analyzing threat assessment and response options with the cold precision that had kept him alive for decades. These weren't casual criminals or disturbed individuals. This was a coordinated attack, planned and executed with military precision. The crowd around him, laughing children, chatting parents, elderly couples sharing funnel cake, had no idea they were in mortal danger. Hassan dropped his rake and moved. Hassan's transformation was subtle but complete. The shuffling gait disappeared, replaced by efficient movement that covered ground quickly while drawing no attention. He reached the first attacker's position by pretending to adjust sprinkler heads along the pathway. "Excuse me," Hassan said in accented English, approaching the man with the backpack. "I need check water pressure here." The man turned impatiently, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Get away, old man. Go sweep somewhere else." Hassan smiled apologetically and stepped closer, ostensibly to move past him. In that moment of proximity, his trained hands identified the shape concealed in the backpack, explosive devices with timer mechanisms. His fingers, still remarkably dexterous, found the pressure point on the man's neck that would render him unconscious within seconds. The attacker dropped silently behind a maintenance shed. Hassan quickly zip-tied his hands with garden ties and confiscated the backpack, confirming his worst fears. Multiple pipe bombs with 8 minutes remaining on synchronized timers. 7 minutes to neutralize 2 more threats and evacuate hundreds of people without causing panic. Hassan moved to the second attacker with the patient stalking skills that had made him legendary in intelligence circles. This one was positioned near the playground, clearly intending to maximize casualties among children. The sight triggered something primal in Hassan, not the cold calculation of his military days, but the protective fury of a grandfather. He approached carrying a leaf blower, the perfect excuse to move anywhere in the park. The noise would also cover any sounds of confrontation. "Sir, please move back," Hassan called out in broken English. "Must clean this area now." The second attacker turned with obvious irritation. "Can't you see we're busy here? Go blow your leaves somewhere else." Hassan activated the leaf blower, creating a cloud of dust and debris that temporarily obscured vision. In the confusion, he moved with speed that belied his age, disarming and incapacitating the second attacker with techniques he hadn't used in 15 years but had never forgotten. 5 minutes remaining. One attacker left, positioned near the exit. The third attacker was the leader. Hassan could tell by his positioning and behavior. He was older, more experienced, and clearly suspicious about his companion's sudden absence. His hand rested near a concealed weapon, and his eyes constantly scanned for threats. Hassan realized a subtle approach wouldn't work this time. He needed a distraction large enough to clear the area without revealing the true nature of the threat. He activated the park's emergency sprinkler system, claiming a gas leak emergency over the PA system he jerry-rigged to broadcast park-wide. The crowd began moving toward exits in orderly confusion, not panic, but purposeful evacuation. The remaining attacker realized his mission was compromised and reached for his weapon. But Hassan was already moving, closing the distance with tactical precision. The confrontation was brief and decisive. Hassan's opponent was skilled, but he wasn't facing a 74-year-old groundskeeper. He was facing Colonel Hassan Demir, and the colonel never lost. By the time police and federal agents arrived, Hassan had secured all 3 attackers and disarmed enough explosive devices to level half the park. The official report credited an alert groundskeeper who noticed suspicious behavior with preventing a major terrorist attack. Hassan sat on a park bench, accepting paramedic attention for minor injuries while FBI agents took his statement. To them, he was just a lucky civilian who'd stumbled onto something bigger than himself. "Mr. Demir," the lead agent said, "your actions today saved hundreds of lives. How did you know what to do?" Hassan smiled with the same gentle expression his neighbors knew so well. "In old country, we learn to watch for danger. Is survival, you understand." The agent nodded, satisfied with the explanation. Hassan's cover held perfectly. His new identity was so thoroughly established that even federal background checks revealed nothing but 15 years of exemplary groundskeeping. Within a week, Riverside Park had returned to its normal rhythm. The memorial garden bloomed with spring flowers, children played on the swings, and joggers followed their familiar routes. Hassan resumed his quiet routine as if nothing had changed. But something had changed, at least for those who'd witnessed his transformation. Mrs. Patterson, who walked her dog past the maintenance shed every morning, stopped to chat more often. "Hassan," she said one day, I keep thinking about what you did during that emergency. How did you stay so calm?" Hassan continued pruning roses, his weathered hands steady and sure. "Is like gardening, Mrs. Patterson. Sometimes you must remove dangerous things before they can hurt what you love." Young Tommy Rodriguez, who'd been playing near the playground that day, brought Hassan a drawing he'd made, a stick figure with a rake labeled Hero Hassan. The old man accepted it with tears in his eyes, because children saw truth more clearly than adults. Late at night, when the park was empty except for night joggers and dog walkers, Hassan would sometimes sit on the bench where he'd been questioned by federal agents. He'd look out at the playground where children would return tomorrow, safe because of actions they'd never fully understand. Hassan had spent his career preventing disasters that never made the news, saving lives that would never know they'd been in danger. His retirement was supposed to be different, quiet, peaceful, anonymous. But some responsibilities transcended retirement, and some skills were too important to bury completely. He thought about his former colleagues in Turkish intelligence, scattered around the world in their own forms of witness protection. They'd chosen different paths, some had disappeared entirely, others had started new careers, a few had returned to active duty. Hassan had chosen to tend gardens and protect children, and he'd never regretted that choice. The suspicious package that had started it all turned out to be part of a larger network of planned attacks across multiple cities. Hassan's intervention had not only saved Riverside Park but had provided intelligence that prevented attacks in 6 other locations. The 3 men he'd captured were connected to an international terrorist organization that had been planning coordinated strikes for over a year. Hassan never learned these details. As far as he knew, he'd simply protected his park and his community. That was enough. 6 months after the incident, Hassan still arrived at Riverside Park every morning at 5 a.m. He still tended the roses, still swept the pathways, still carried candy for the children. But now the community looked at him differently. They didn't know the full truth. They couldn't, for their own safety and his. But they recognized something they hadn't seen before, the quiet strength of someone who dedicated his life to protecting others. Mayor Williams presented Hassan with a commendation during the summer festival, calling him a guardian angel who watches over our community. Hassan accepted the recognition with humble gratitude, but privately he knew the truth was more complex. Angels were pure beings of light and goodness. Hassan had been something much more dangerous and much more human. He'd made difficult choices, carried out missions that required moral compromises, and lived with consequences that haunted his dreams. But he'd also learned that redemption could be found in simple acts of daily service. The roses he planted would bloom for years after he was gone. The children he protected would grow up to protect children of their own. The community he'd served would be stronger because he'd been part of it. Hassan Demir, former colonel of Turkish military intelligence, continued tending Riverside Park until his natural death at age 89. His obituary described him as a beloved groundskeeper who touched countless lives through his dedication to our community. His small apartment was cleaned out by a distant nephew who found nothing suspicious, just gardening books, plant catalogs, and hundreds of thank you notes from children whose parents had taught them to appreciate the kind man who made their playground beautiful. The nephew did find one unusual item, a worn leather journal filled with detailed sketches of flowers, trees, and landscaping plans. He donated it to the Park Service, where it became a resource for future groundskeepers who wanted to maintain Hassan's high standards. What the nephew didn't recognize were the subtle notations throughout the journal, security assessments, threat evaluations, and emergency protocols disguised as gardening notes. Hassan had never stopped being a guardian, even in retirement. The Park Service installed a small memorial bench in Hassan's honor, placed where he used to sit during his breaks. The inscription read, "In memory of Hassan Demir, he made beautiful things grow." Children still play in Riverside Park, safe and happy, protected by sprinkler systems and playground equipment that Hassan maintained with military precision. Parents still bring their families to festivals and gatherings, trusting in the security of their community space. Few of them realize that their safety was once guaranteed by a man who chose to transform his capacity for violence into a gift for nurturing life. Hassan's greatest victory wasn't the terrorist attack he prevented, but the 15 years of ordinary days when nothing dangerous happened at all. In a world where heroes are often celebrated for dramatic moments of action, Hassan Demir proved that the most important heroism happens in the quiet spaces between emergencies, in the daily choice to tend, protect, and serve others without recognition or reward. The roses he planted still bloom every spring. tended now by a new groundskeeper who doesn't know the full story of his predecessor. But the flowers remember, and so does the earth that holds their roots, and so does the community that benefits from the beauty and safety that one man's hidden past made possible. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who choose to be gentle, and sometimes the greatest strength is found in the decision to stay hidden until the moment when being seen is the only way to save lives. Hassan Demir understood this truth, and he lived it every day until his last. Where are you watching this story from today? Whether you're in a quiet suburb or a busy city, take a moment to look around at the people who maintain the spaces where you feel safe. That groundskeeper, that janitor, that security guard, they might be carrying stories you never imagined. If you enjoyed Hassan's story of hidden heroism and quiet strength, don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Life Stories. We share these powerful reminders that extraordinary people often hide in plain sight, waiting for the moment when their true nature is needed most. The real heroes aren't always wearing uniforms or carrying badges. Sometimes they're carrying rakes and watering cans, protecting us one ordinary day at a time.